To kick off our session, it's my pleasure to welcome Sean Graglia, Lead Marketing Consultant at Alencia XR, who will guide us through today's session. Over to you, Sean.
Thanks for kicking us off, Adam. Really appreciate it. Hi, folks. I'm Sean Graglia. I lead marketing for Alencia XR and HoloAnatomy, and it is a pleasure to be with you today. Let me start by thanking everyone for spending time with us today, especially our friends from the American Association for Anatomy. Welcome. On our first webcast in the fall series, you may have heard me talk about the story of the how and the why of HoloAnatomy coming to be. In the last webcast, you would have heard about the impact the solution is having at Kansas College of Osteopathic Medicine. Well, today we've got another great transformation story for you, this time coming from Finger Lakes Community College. Now, let's just go over the agenda and then we'll dive right in. So we'll take a look at the goal that we have in this session is really to share the learnings directly from a leader who has transformed anatomy education. You'll walk away with a better understanding of how you may be able to realize these kind of improvements in your anatomy learning. So we'll cover a few topics in the session today. First, we'll start off with reimagining. I'll spend a little bit of time providing some context about what it means to reimagine anatomy and what that solution looks like that's at the center of the story that we'll dive into today. Next on the agenda, we'll have a great guest from Finger Lakes Community College, and she'll share the journey that they've experienced in raising the bar on anatomy education by adopting HoloAnatomy. And then we'll move on. We'll have a few minutes left to do a quick Q&A after the formal presentation. We'll get any questions answered that you may have about how things worked at Finger Lakes Community College or HoloAnatomy. And then I'll just leave you with a few things about how to get started on your own journey on transforming anatomy education. Now, for some context around our guest presentation today, before I hand it over to her, I just wanted to provide you a little background on the solution that we're going to be talking about. And so for Alencia, the reimagining of anatomy education with XR technology actually started out of necessity. In 2014, Case Western Reserve University was planning to build a new health education campus, and they wanted to emphasize multidisciplinary education for future medical and PA and nursing and dental all the way through. But the key challenge they found was that this new campus was not going to be able to accommodate a new cadaver lab for anatomy education. So this challenge was really an opportunity to actually consider how XR technology could actually help anatomy education excellence. And so when they looked at that and they stood back, there's really three components that were critical in building out a solution that would address their needs. The first was the anatomical detail had to be deep, it had to be accurate, and it had to be clear. It even needed to go beyond the clarity that you would see in a typical cadaver. It had to make the invisible visible to be able to learn. Next, the solution had to be flexible enough so that it would allow the educators, the trainers, the instructors to tailor the content of what they're delivering to the learners, but aligned with already an existing curricula. So they didn't want to reinvent the wheel. They wanted to be able to adapt the anatomical wheel to their curriculum. And finally, it had to be able to support both collaborative and independent learning. So they wanted to be able to have the learners collaborate together and examine structures and deepen their understanding of spatial relations between those structures. But they also wanted to be able to have the individual learners reinforce their own learning on their own. So after all these options, Case Western Reserve University realized they needed to create a new XR solution, and they ended up with a suite of apps to empower instructors and trainers and learners. So what they created was the HoloAnatomy Suite. That was their solution to addressing the needs of gross anatomy learning. And recently, Alencia XR brought out a new solution that would help learners get deeper into neuroanatomy. And so the suite contains apps that help build instructional content, they help learn through immersion in the spatial relations, and to help manage the delivery over the course of the instruction. So at the heart of each of these suites is actually the best-in-class library of anatomical structures, including detailed neuroanatomy, the most detailed that's available in any of these types of solutions. So now that we have a common understanding of what the solution is that we'll be talking about today, let me introduce my esteemed guest to share the impact that that solution is having on anatomy learning. I am fortunate in my role at Alencia XR to work with people who are simply a joy to collaborate with, who are really change agents driving positive change. And our featured speaker today is an exceptional change agent. It's my pleasure to introduce Christine Parker, professor in the Department of Science and Technology at Finger Lakes Community College. Christine was an early pioneer proving out the value of reinventing anatomy with XR technology. And today she'll share her insights into that journey and the positive impact she's seen. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you, Sean. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to be here with us today. As Sean stated, I am a professor in the Department of Science and Technology at Finger Lakes Community College. I have been at FLCC for a little over 15 years, and I teach anatomy and physiology courses to first and second year students. I am also the coordinator for 3 of our A&P courses. We became a HoloAnatomy partner in 2018, and since then have been using mixed reality hardware along with Alencia XR's HoloAnatomy software suite to teach anatomy fundamentals at FLCC. So a little bit of our roadmap for today. I would like to bring you along a little bit of the journey that we took to using mixed reality and HoloAnatomy. I'll start by sharing a little bit about community colleges in general. Okay? Some of the common pedagogical challenges that kind of drove us to consider alternative teaching practices. I'll go into a little bit of an overview of some of the major technologies that are considered when we say extended reality, of which mixed reality is one type. Next, I'll talk a little bit about how we went about funding and implementing this pretty costly initiative. Lastly, I'll summarize some of our expansion efforts and hopes for the future. So Finger Lakes Community College, we are a small liberal arts college with approximately 5,400 full and part-time students. At FLCC, we have several campuses, but our main campus, which is where I teach out of, is about 5 minutes from one of New York's hardest to pronounce Finger Lakes, which is Canandaigua Lake. So we are right in the heart of wine country in Western New York. We are a publicly funded institution, which means we get the majority of our funding from our local county and also from New York State. Now, this is going to become relevant later when I actually talk about the nuts and bolts for how we implemented a costly initiative at a time when budgets are really pretty restricted. So a little bit about community colleges. The majority of community colleges, including FLCC, are what are considered open enrollment institutions. So if you're not familiar with that term, open enrollment means if you have graduated from an accredited high school or earned a GED, you can apply for acceptance and you will get in. So as a result, being open enrollment means we have an incredibly diverse student body. Now, this diversity is fantastic in that it automatically sets us up to be able to have very robust conversations and experiences, but some of this diversity also has its fair share of challenges. For instance, over the last couple of years, we have seen a significant decline in preparedness in college-level work in traditional college-age students. Now, this adds challenge on top of what we already have, which is a very wide age range in our students. In my classes, I can have everything from that traditional age college student to a middle-aged parent who maybe is changing careers, all the way to someone who might be at the end of their career just looking for some further learning or continuing education. I can recall a section I had probably 10 years ago in which I had a gentleman who was retired from a 30-year teaching career. He taught high school biology for almost 35 years. And here he was in my classes right next to 17-year-olds fresh out of high school. So this is a very unique classroom setting. Now, we also see diversity in the socioeconomic status of our students. At FLCC, over 70% of our students work, some of them full-time, and many of them have families. Roughly a third of our students are first-generation college students, and this one is tragic, but a good 50% of our student body is economically disadvantaged. So I say all this to just convey not only the breadth of our student community, but also to reinforce the fact that our students have challenges before they even walk through our doors. Now, we all know that tuition costs have risen steadily and dramatically over the past couple of decades. Just a quick look at the graph on the right side of your screen illustrates this. Now, this has unfortunately translated in many cases to some major student loan burden. Now, in this environment, high cost and worry about graduating in debt, community colleges have become a very attractive option for students wishing to save some money while still earning a high quality education. At FLCC, our yearly tuition cost ranges between $5,000 and $7,000 per year for a full-time student, depending on where they live. Now, I'd like to kind of pause for a moment for a poll. It'll just be a single question and answer to the best of your ability. And we'll give it about 30 seconds for folks to answer this question.
Results are coming in, looks pretty diverse.
Okay. So I actually did not see the results. But oh, there they are. Thank you, Adam. All right, we absolutely have some diverse results. So this was not unanimous by any means. Now for the answer. In 2019, a study was done by the National Center, excuse me, for Education Statistics. And in 2019, there were approximately 11 million students attending undergraduate institutions. And of those 11 million students, a third attended community college. So that number is approximate to what we see today as well. So think of that, about 1 in 3 students are attending some amount of their undergraduate career at a community college. According to, as a result, we are poised, when I say we, I mean community colleges, are poised to play a major role in the education of our future workers. Okay, so not only in a variety of trades and fields, but of special interest to us here today, the healthcare industry. Now, in 2021, there was a National Academies report that highlighted the importance that community colleges are going to be playing in the next 10 years as a workforce pipeline for healthcare workers, but especially in nursing. And at FLCC, our nursing program, as well as our healthcare studies program, are 2 of the most popular degree programs. In addition, our Workforce and Career Solutions division has a growing list of healthcare training opportunities. Taken together, this affords not only FLCC, but community colleges in general to positively impact a significant number of students entering the healthcare field. Now, I teach anatomy and physiology, right? Body parts and how they work. A lot of students struggle with A&P. It is definitely one of our high failure rate courses. Now, throughout my years of teaching A&P, I'm always polling my students. I want to hear from them what they think their challenges to learning are. I see some common themes in their responses. Now, some of these challenges are a result of previously mentioned diverse backgrounds, their work status, their socioeconomic status, and so on. Then more recently, we're dealing with COVID learning losses while being under pressure to boost student success and retention. Whatever the cause is, we know our students are having challenges, and the onus is on us as instructors to try and evolve our pedagogical practices as the obstacles to student learning evolve. Now, 100 years ago, lecture was the gold practice, gold standard for teaching. That's not the case anymore. Our students today are not the students of 100 years ago. So we need to continue evolving our teaching if we want to keep fostering student success. Now, the overwhelming majority of my students are aspiring nurses, and anatomy and physiology is certainly required core coursework for them, as well as students in several other degree paths. Over the years, we have taught fundamental concepts of anatomy using a combination of lecture, 2D reference images, online tools like websites or apps, and an assortment of plastic models. We do not have a cadaver lab at FLCC, and this is pretty common, pretty standard at many community colleges. Now, many of our students struggle with this, not only reflecting their desire for more engaging hands-on learning, but especially when you consider all of the external obstacles they're already facing as they attempt to complete their education. Now, I don't think I have to convince anyone here that active learning strategies in the classroom is beneficial. It can be a single strategy or a variety. It can be a simple one, a complicated one. Active learning helps improve motivation, engagement, collaboration, and autonomous learning, among other things. Now, more recently, we are starting to see some positive impacts that wearable technologies can have on different aspects of student learning. Current research is showing benefits to things like technical and spatial abilities, hand-eye coordination, knowledge mastery, retention, and more. At FLCC, we first learned about mixed reality and HoloAnatomy by way of this short vocative media clip in 2016. The focus of the media clip, I'm not going to play it here, but the focus of the media clip was the evolution of anatomy education at Case Western Reserve University Medical School. When we saw this, we were captivated and couldn't help but wonder if this approach could also revolutionize anatomy education at my level, at the community college level. I distinctly remember thinking, like, why do fancy medical schools get to have all of the fun tools? Like, I want this in my classes, right? So this is how it began. Now, if you have had an opportunity to participate in either of the previous webinars in this series, you will have already gotten an introduction by either Sean Graglia or Dr. Kim Jeter to the hardware that we at FLCC are also using. But for those of you in the audience today for whom this is your first webinar, I would like to take a couple of moments to just provide an overview of the technologies being referred to when we say extended reality, or XR for short. Extended reality is an umbrella term that is used to include three separate but very related hardware technologies. As these technologies have continued to develop, there is some growing overlap between them, But for right now, let's begin with some basics and how they differ from one another. Virtual reality, what most people are the most familiar with. This is the oldest of the three XR technologies. It has been around for decades. It is a highly immersive experience in which the user is transported into a completely synthesized digital world. You put on a headset and you are immediately immersed into an artificial but highly interactive environment. Now, today's VR headsets typically have handheld controllers or joysticks that can be used to carry out an array of actions that are meant to mimic hand-eye coordination, among other things. Now, in education, this is naturally well suited for something like skills development, technical skills training. However, this was really not something we were looking to adopt for our A&P classes due to, number one, our larger class sizes, but also due to very common reports of isolation and motion sickness that can sometimes happen using VR. Next, we have augmented reality or AR. Now, huge difference here where the user can still see their world around them. Instead, there is some kind of digital content added into their field of view. So in this way, we talk about a person's real world being augmented with digital content. Consider, for instance, trying on a pair of glasses through your eyeglass provider before actually going to the store and seeing them in person. You can use the camera from your cell phone or your computer in order to mock, try on something before buying it. My husband and I were doing a home improvement project over this summer, and I can't tell you how long I spent on the Home Depot app looking at different flooring samples in my space before actually going to the store and purchasing one. This is what augmented reality is. Now, it gets rid of the motion sickness and the social isolation of VR, but it is often usually the case that the digital content, the user is just observing it. They're not really interacting with it in any way, or I should say to a limited extent. This brings us to mixed reality, which this is the newest, and as the name implies, it is kind of a mixture of features of VR and features of AR. Now, it retains the ability for the user to see their physical environment, and it's adding in digital content in their field of view. But now, taking the benefit of VR, users can interact with what they are seeing in a very robust fashion. This, to us, was like the best of both worlds. So collectively, there's a wide range of devices across these three, and there are some devices that do more than one. They all have their pros and cons, as well as best use kind of case scenarios. Now, the device that we are using, I should say we are using mixed reality if I wasn't clear on that. And the device that we are using to do that is Microsoft HoloLens. And we're running Alencia XR's HoloAnatomy software on that device. Now, elephant in the room, right? So no matter what institution you work at, budgets matter, right? They can be very restrictive. XR devices range in cost from really pretty affordable to incredibly expensive. Microsoft HoloLens, unfortunately, falls on that latter end with a per device cost of over $3,000 per unit. At a price tag like that, you can quickly see how trying to outfit a class of 30 students or more becomes incredibly expensive. At this point, you might be wondering, how could we implement such a costly initiative at a small publicly funded institution? So I'd like to share how we did that. After learning about mixed reality and HoloAnatomy, like what the heck they were, in 2016, we had a lot of conversations around campus about what this could look like at FLCC. It seemed like a really big project that would be hard to pull off. Like, how could we afford to do something like this? So what we did is we started by taking advantage of a couple of small internal IT grants that were put out by our IT department that were trying to encourage faculty to try new technologies in the classroom. We applied for several of these grants, and over 3 semesters, we got enough funds to be able to purchase 4 HoloLenses. We took these HoloLenses, we shared them with A&P faculty, we brought them into the classroom so that students could try them out, and we surveyed them to see kind of what their impression was of the technology and speculate on the potential usefulness for learning anatomy. Now, the initial feedback when we did that was unbelievable. Students and instructors alike were very enthusiastic. I am not kidding, it's not a joke when I say people crawl around on the floor to get a better look. It showed an interaction and an engagement and an enthusiasm with holograms to a degree far greater than I had ever seen with traditional models in our classrooms. The student that you see in the middle of your screen, he was very interesting. He was an adult student, and up until this point in the semester, very quiet. He really didn't interact much with his classmates. He hardly said anything at all to me. When I put a HoloLens on his head, he was up out of his seat, moving around, interacting, as you can see in the picture. It was like a completely different person. So this showed us that we might actually have something here that is worth fighting for. Now, we got lucky with our timing a bit. Also in 2018, FLCC was launching a new 5-year institutional strategic plan. Along with that, our board of trustees established a strategic plan fund that was opened up to applications by individuals or groups at the college. The board was looking for project proposals that were novel, maybe exploratory, maybe even higher risk, as long as they were directly supportive of one or more of the new strategic plan components. They encouraged outside of the box thinking. We proposed and were approved for a HoloLens and HoloAnatomy pilot project. So this is how we got our proposal off the ground. We became a HoloAnatomy partner in the summer of 2018 and brought HoloAnatomy into our A&P 1 courses for the first time during fall 2018. From that first semester, fall of 18, up through March of 2020, we conducted a quasi-experimental classroom research project that was asking whether or not HoloLens and HoloAnatomy use could improve student performance on bone and muscle laboratory exams. The results of that study were incredibly promising and suggested that students did indeed perform higher. We saw some significance. And this was incredibly exciting to us, especially when considering how varied our student body is. Now, unfortunately, this all came to a screeching halt during the COVID shutdown. We paused our HoloAnatomy use due to being remote. Now, mixed reality technology is absolutely capable of being used remotely, but our ever-changing student population makes it impossible for us to lend out devices. However, we did use this time to upgrade our hardware and make improvements to our teaching space based on lessons learned up until that point. This round of upgrades was funded by a COVID-related grant proposal that identified how this technology use at FLCC could be expanded to reach more students. Now, at this time, Case Western was already showing how HoloAnatomy teaching could be done very effectively, being 100% remote. Now, we couldn't go that route, but what we did was, since we didn't have the ability to send a device home with every student, we proposed a project that detailed a hybrid learning approach called HyFlex, where instead of sending devices home with students, we were proposing a way that this technology could be used to simultaneously teach students across multiple campuses. We were approved for that grant, and this is an ongoing effort. Now, a major question that comes up with the project of this nature is, how can it be expanded? What are additional ways students can benefit? It is not always easy to convince widespread adoption of novel teaching approaches. To attempt to grow our HoloAnatomy use in ways other than traditional classroom use, one of the things we've done is to integrate HoloAnatomy tutoring into our Science Tutoring Center. We've made a tutoring space that is small. It can accommodate 3 to 4 students at a time. It mimics our classroom teaching space and therefore has enabled any student needing an anatomy review to have access to HoloAnatomy. So it's not just A&P students, it might be nursing students or exercise science students or kinesiology students and so on. Another initiative we're starting up is the focused use of HoloAnatomy for some of our science labs. Rather than a full lesson, this is intended to be a way to provide a quick 10 to 15-minute review of one or more key body structures that might be relevant to that day's lab. This can be a way to introduce instructors to XR technology in a small scale way, and at the same time, enabling more students to reap the benefits. Now, we've seen how HoloAnatomy can have a positive impact on student learning in A&P. So now we're trying to identify how we can further use the technology to collaborate with other disciplines. So this is not for the purposes of delivering entire curricula, but rather maybe just helping achieve a singular learning outcome or to have a unique one-off experience. Now, this helps eliminate need for huge expansions in space or staffing. It doesn't require huge time requirements for instructors. And an added bonus here is that by showing interdisciplinary collaboration, it can help show administration and financial stakeholders why a costly initiative like this should continue to be supported. At FLCC, we're piloting the use of HoloAnatomy to help psychology students better understand brain structure. We're also starting to use HoloAnatomy to help our LPN students visualize key clinical anatomical landmarks. In addition, we're also developing a way to use HoloAnatomy to help fine arts students better conceptualize body proportions and dimensions, right? These are just a couple of examples. But we're always looking for ways to collaborate if it will help enhance our students' success. So over the past 6 years collectively, we've learned a huge amount about various aspects of extended reality technology, how to implement them in the classroom, classroom management. We are very excited to continue our HoloAnatomy work and our partnership with Alencia XR. If it is not already obvious, we highly value collaboration and are always open to exploring additional opportunities. Personally, I feel we are just scratching the surface on what XR technology can do for student learning, for student training, and their development. I'd welcome the opportunity to connect and chat more with any of you here today, but I absolutely have to take a moment to acknowledge a few of the many people at FLCC who helped to make this project a reality and have continued to support our XR use. It has definitely been a team effort and a really fun journey along the way. So at this time, I would like to thank you all for your time and attention, and I will turn it back over to Sean.
Thanks, Christine. Really enjoyed what you shared, and don't mind delving into a lot of the different points that you made. Very good insights. One of the things you were talking about was the evolving nature of the technology and then the teaching capabilities that went with that. And so it made me think about, particularly on when it comes to XR technology, it's constantly evolving. We're seeing stuff every day that things are changing and the technology actually becoming less expensive. It's one of the points behind where we're evolving our own HoloAnatomy platform so that we can enable those type of technologies and those devices for less expensive devices, such as the MetaQuest 3, and we're talking hundreds of dollars versus thousands of dollars. So we look forward to providing you more information about what that next release looks like in the near future. The other thing I stuck on was you talked about the active learning revolution. And one of the interesting points we're finding in this industry is we've got students reading from primary school that are experiencing the XR technology and expecting to be able to learn with that as they go to college and as they actually end up in the workplace. So very good points, and I really appreciate you covering those. Thanks, Christine. So, well, we've got time for a couple of questions. Adam, I know you've been taking a quick look at the chat, and I'll be curious to see what our audience is interested in at this time.
Yeah, of course. I got a few questions for you over here, Christine. And first one is, what kind of team did you pull together to deploy HoloAnatomy?
Great question. Yes, this is not an initiative that can be done all by yourself, right? So a lot of support, and in the early days, a lot of our support here, my support here came from our IT department. And one of the ways that we pulled it off initially, when we didn't have, for instance, in the early days, a dedicated person, a dedicated support staff person for HoloAnatomy, was we basically made like a sign-up sheet. So I'd have a semester-wide calendar of all of the dates and times that I'd be running different HoloAnatomy classes, and a whole group of IT colleagues would kind of look at that schedule and sort of sign up for what day or days they would be able to come in and offer some support. So we got creative in those early days when we needed support in the classroom during physical classes, but there wasn't a single targeted person that was filling that role at that time. So it's been a pattern that has continued, and other stakeholders around the college have since then also offered support. But in the early days, our IT folks played a huge role. Great question.
Excellent. Thank you, Christine. And yeah, we do have another one here. Have you observed any improvements in students learning anatomy with the solution?
Yeah, absolutely. So I only briefly mentioned, but in those early days, it was about a 3 1/3 semester quasi-experimental classroom research project where we took a shared assessment that we have in all of our A&P sections, no matter where it's being taught or what modality is being taught in. We do have a couple of those shared assessments, and we took 2 of those, bone practical and a muscle practical, which are pretty standard anatomy lab practicals, and we asked what effect HoloLens and HoloAnatomy use had on student learning. We specifically said, do students perform better following HoloAnatomy use? And without going into too many details, we did see significance on the muscle practical scores. Now, the way that students take them, they take their bone practical first, Then they have a couple of weeks of preparation, and then they take their muscle practical. And we saw significance that students who had the opportunity to use HoloAnatomy scored significantly higher than students who did not. So it was really exciting, and it kind of gave us some of that proof of concept that we were looking for in those early days. Great question.
Awesome. Thank you. And we have another one that just came in recently, which is, can HoloAnatomy be used with large groups like 50 students or more?
Yes, it can. I don't. My classroom size, and it's sort of a space setting. Actually, let me think. Probably the biggest group that I have presented to. So this was actually for a demo purpose, but it was probably about 35 people. And they were new users, so they had zero HoloLens experience. And so it was absolutely something that I definitely need classroom support or tech support with that. But it was pretty easy to do. So yes, it is very well scalable to larger group sizes. Absolutely.
And just to add to that, Christine, I mean, one of the points of scale that we had early on was the need to go remotely. And so we actually had upwards of 50 and beyond students learning at the same time. It's actually how I received my first lesson, was actually in this room when there was about 50 other people on the call. So yeah, definitely scalable on that side. We have time for maybe one more question, and if there were any leftover questions, happy to address those directly with you. Adam, do you see anything? Or I see one.
Yep, I see. How did the students react to using this technology compared to other technologies?
Yeah, so it's been amazing. I mean, they always have that initial wow factor the first time they've seen it, or the first time they see it when they first get their training on the device. So that's standard. That has always been the case. But what's really interesting is to see that engagement continue. So it's one thing to get excited about something the first time you see it. And in many of my classes, this is right at the beginning of the semester. It's another thing to be at week 10, stressed out of their minds, getting yet more anatomy content, but they are still moving around their holograms. They're talking to one another. They're working in small groups. They're looking inside structures. They are continuing to be actively engaged. So it is vastly more than what we would see with a website or a plastic model. So yeah, we have absolutely seen really amazing student engagement with this technology.
Excellent. Another common theme that I'm hearing when I talk to the folks that are leveraging HoloAnatomy platform. So this is great. I'd love to go longer. Our dialogue is rich, but I can see by the clock that we need to wrap things up. So we'll just talk a little bit about what the next steps can be. And we just scratched the surface today. We talked about the solution, the impact. There's opportunity to go deeper and opportunity to stay connected with us as these solutions quickly evolve, as I mentioned earlier. Lots of change, positive change coming. So first, you can go back and review any of these webinars that are actually on the site, and I've got the link that I've just put in the chat for you to take a look at some of the earlier conversations that we've had with different institutions to understand what the possibilities are. So take a look at that. And that leads to the next area that I'd encourage you to spend some time on, is just learning a little bit more about what we're talking about, but also the stories that come with that and the impact that's been found and how the field of anatomy and neuroanatomy has changed forever in these organizations that have adapted this. And so you'll see some research that proves some of the points that we were talking about, the product material, and of course the stories from that, like the ones you heard today. And finally, when you're at the point where you want to go deeper and explore this potential for your organization, just reach out to us. Let our depth of XR expertise help guide you through this technology and how it can positively impact your institution. So just to close off with a few final words, I'll highlight a few points that we talked about throughout the past 45 minutes. One is like the XR technology is just continuing to evolve, which is why we're evolving the HoloAnatomy platform to support different, less expensive devices, but as well as other devices that are needed in the market. And so that technology and that change is accelerating, and the expectation that learners have is also accelerating to be able to access that technology and reinforce their learning. And why is that happening? Well, it's because of the impact. And we're seeing, you saw some of that. One of the last questions Christine reinforced was the impact that we're seeing, the deeper engagement with the learners, their ability to absorb the material and reinforce what they're seeing, the understanding of spatial relationships. So the impact is significant. And the final thing I'd leave you point on there would leave with you is the partnership with Valencia XR. As you're navigating the field of how XR technology can help your folks learn better, and your instructors and trainers actually rise to the challenge that's out there of everything that everyone needs to learn, I encourage you to collaborate with us on exploring what the potential is. So as a follow-up to this webinar, you will receive a survey as soon as the webinar ends. We really appreciate your feedback. We're always trying to improve on these webinars. And you'll also receive an email in the next couple of days with the links to some of the material that we talked about, as well as the recording. And I'll just close by saying thank you so much. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Adam, for running the webinar. And thank you for attending and staying with us as we talk through this journey. I look forward to continuing the discussion with you. Thank you.